Hi, Anna. How are you?
Hello.
I'm Nadia Rios from Argentina, and I'm so happy to be here because when I was seeing the series, like journalist, it was amazing the way you tell the things that the journalists, especially women, we must fight for. And one thing that Hellen has is that she's always fighting between her public strength and her personality and her problems. How it was for you to make these two personalities in the same way?
It was so fun because, and I think that it's like when we first began, the first stuff, like way back when in season 1, the first stuff that we shot was all of the stuff at the news desk, which is so heightened and so huge. And I think that that kind of gave us the scale that we were able to work within. And so I think that that sort of like set us off on like really good footing. But then part of the joy of it is that it's like, on stage, off stage. So you can flip so dramatically, like within a second when the camera turns off. And we really lent into that, into the, the facade of, the journalist and the newsreader, into like the chaos of what happens behind the scenes and straight back in. And I think as far as Helen's personality goes, that also was like a real little key and into how quickly she can flip both in her life and on screen.
Well, in this season, we especially see a new Helen, a new way she uh, uh, fight for her place in a journalist that is like dominated by men. How it was this change to make, I think that it was one of the best things we could see in this season. The way she is always going for her place, and also with a team that doesn't respect her until now.
I thought about I very much wanted, and it wasn't there in the original scripts when it came through, but I was like, I wanted to show that you can kind of, that you have the power, that essentially like you have the power. And I was reading a book and there was this little story that a journalist actually had spoken about. And she said it was a game changer for her when she realized that as a woman, she always gave over, like she always gave the power over, or she'd always stay for the next 5 minutes, or she'd always work that little bit later, or if the meeting wasn't finished. And she was sitting down and looking at her boss, who was a man one time. And, the meeting was supposed to go until 6 o'clock, but they hadn't quite finished anything. And then at 6 o'clock, he stood up and said, "I'll see you tomorrow, like we're done." And she was like, just shocked. There was no aggression in it. It was just, this is just the boundary, or this is the bit. And the power of no, like the power of just saying a no, like without any of the other stuff that we tend to put in it, and that Helen certainly always put on it. And so we kind of worked that scene in the boardroom with all of the men going, "You should blah, blah," and the way that she would have reacted before she'd sort of gone on this, and I mean, I don't say it loosely, before she'd gone on this little healing journey, was, she would have kind of fought it and kind of like, had the fight and all the rest of it going, trying to prove that she was right. And we just wanted it to just be so simple, like, no, just so simple, just like, these are my boundaries and this is what I'll accept, and no, just gently. And the fact that people can't handle it, and especially men can't handle it when you're just sitting totally within your power, and that you can actually say no. And so that was like a really poignant thing that we had kind of like really worked towards, where it wasn't this great big dramatic monologue of this is where I am now. It's just the simplicity of it's on you. Like I'm secure.
Well, I love this way of seeing it because, for example, here in Argentina, I know journalists that work, women that work I start working a lot of time before me, and they tell me the way the journalists change. Have you based your character in a journalist of Australia that it's too famous, or have you seen another story and the way the journalists change?
I didn't base, no, Hellen wasn't based on anybody real, but she's an amalgamation. Like I spoke to a lot of different people, and I had played a journalist a while ago, a print journalist, which I felt was quite different until I kind of started realizing that in order to get to the desk, you actually have to have done the hard work. So it's the same personality bias. Like you have to be, you know, there's a certain like there's something in someone that's capable of asking a serious question and not being afraid of putting a microphone in someone's face and, you know, going there. But we did have, and again, she was not based on her at all, but there was a very famous Australian journalist, an incredibly smart, she was really beautiful and very successful, called Jana Wendt. And she was the first woman who had her own show, which is kind of where Hellen ends up getting at the very end. And so that was kind of, not that Hellen was based on her, but there was like a distinctive shift that happened then in Australia.
Wow, that's amazing. And now can we talk about Hellen and her relationship with Dale? I love the way they grow up together, especially in this season. And what can you tell me about this relationship, and to the fans what that haven't seen the series yet? What are they going to see in these episodes?
I think that Dale and Hellen are kindred spirits and were meant to be in each other's lives, you know. I think that there's like a deep, which you don't get in many relationships, be it an intimate or romantic or a friendship, but I feel like they both have no judgment of each other. And I think that they both offer each other a safety net that the rest of the world doesn't. And I think to find that is incredibly special and powerful. And even though they sort of crack and come back and crack and come back, this season is them. We begin it with them independently. Helen's been away and she comes back, and they've kind of like switched roles, I guess, in essence, but their personalities haven't changed. They're still the same person at their core. And I think that this season is them finding themselves, you know, with the support of the other. And I don't want to give too much away, but I love them. I think that the relationship between Hellen and Dale makes the show, obviously. And I don't think that it's tied up in a big, you know, bow at the end, which is how life works. And when we do say goodbye to them, we know that they're like, it's not the end of their life. It's like I think that we've ended the show and this is our last season. I think that we've ended it right. And I think that we've done them a good service in that there's hope.
Yes, I agree. And when I was in the episodes, I noticed that they started to think about what Helen made all the seasons, and how she grew up, and to start respecting her in another way, and that's amazing. But do you think that we can see Helen like a teacher of Dale in journalism?
I think that the show is called The Newsreader, and I think that we sort of spend time wondering who the newsreader is, you know, And I think that there's a full circle that happens because Hellen is the newsreader, and she's in it because she's a journalist. Not that Dale isn't, but you can very easily get eaten up by not just the journalistic element, but like what it is to be on TV, all of that kind of stuff. Like, who do you do it for? And where's your own compass, And I think one thing that Helen's always had is she knows who she is. She doesn't always like herself, but she does always know who she is. And ultimately, I do think that even though she's so emotional and all the rest of it, she is always able to step out of it and see the bigger picture. And I think Dale, but she's been doing it for a lot longer than Dale. And I think Dale kind of experiences what happens when you are in that position and end up isolated and all the rest of it. But he finds his way.
And to finish, can you please tell me in 3 words how it
I'm
was?
very bad at 3 words. I'm very bad at that.
Sorry.
No,
What is the newsreader about for the people that haven't seen the first 2 seasons?
I don't know. There's no way I could use 3 words. I don't know. I don't even know.
You can use more.
Yeah, no, it's a ride. I think it's I think it works on a bunch of different levels. I think it's like a romp as far as, looking at the world of news in the 80s. I think it's kind of like a real nod with love to the era, that was the 80s. I don't think we ever judge it. But I also think it's a really deep emotional look at 2 very distinct personalities and how they navigate the world.
Thank you so much. And I want to tell you, I love you since my encounter. It was amazing.
Oh, thank you.
You.
You're very